Okay, I'm interested. You mentioned in, I think, part one that you and three mates ended up being this you used to go to the races. So, I mean, going to the races itself's a little bit daunting if you've never been, which is a shame it's a bit daunting, but I remember going for the first time, it's a bit daunting. So, what initially interested you in horse racing?
Well, funny enough, I was a pastry chef in London, and we used to work around the corner from Fleet Street. So all the journalists used to come into our shop, and they would talk about horse racing, and it triggered. I listened, but it didn't really. I wasn't really that interested in it. And then I went. I went with my mates, went with myself, and then I just found it going to the races, watching people having bets, tic tac, the whole thing, the whole day just grabbed me, and it had something that appealed to me. Didn't know I'd be working it, didn't know I could even know anything about it. But those sort of things just trigger things into me. And then, obviously, being left on my own, being a black person wasn't easy because I didn't know anybody. So it was really hard. But I got to know people. And then when I used to go racing, like Saturdays and Fridays, Saturdays, and during the week, you start meeting professional punters. So you start meeting people like Alan Potts, Dave Neverson, um, um, uh, Dave Neverson, Eddie Fremantle, all those sort of people. And then you start to being around those sort of people, and then you pick things up from them. You kind of learn. I remember meeting a bloke called Afrani. He was a massive punter. He was a massive punter. I mean, I remember when he won. It was at the Guineas, and the Stout horse won for Cheveley Park, and I think he had something like 60 or 70 grand on this horse, and he was such a big punter, but he did his own thing. And you can't, if you're around those sort of people, you kind of learn what you should and what you shouldn't be doing. So, because everyone went racing in them days, there would be so many characters, so many people you would learn from. I mean, one of the first person that I actually met, but I didn't know him for long, was Dodger McCarthy. I met him, and I got to know him for a very short space of time. But just talking to him, and he would explain things and kind of point you in the right direction. All those were just a learning curve to me. So I was like a sponge, absorbing, trying to suck it all in and trying to learn from these people. And lucky enough, some of it's rubbed off.
And that is one thing that people that aren't as old as me won't realise what it was like on the racecourses back in those days.
Oh,
The
definitely.
good old days really were the good old days for learning from old professionals. But so we've got to move on a bit though. So you're a pastry chef, and then you're on the Weekender for 16 years.
Yeah,
So you've become a journalist. You're just a budding writer, or how, you know?
that was just, I mean, I was going racing, doing stuff for other people. And then Jerry said to me one day, I think I might have been at Ascot. He said, I'm going to retire next year. And I went, all right. And he said, I think you can do my job. And I thought, I'm not sure about that. And he said, look, I'm sure you can do your job. And I thought, well, I haven't seen many people who are black are actually being a journalist. So I thought, I'm not sure. But Fleur Cushman, who was the editor, said, look, Ken, you're the perfect person for the job. So I got the job. When I got the job, I got loads of stick saying that I don't know anything about horse racing. I shouldn't have got the job. It's only because I was a friend. And she said, no, he can do the job. She stuck by me, and it flourished, and it just took off. I mean, my first column I've written compared to now is it looks totally different. But it was a learning curve, and she helped me through it to how she wanted it structured and how they wanted it. And I worked there for 16 years at the Weekender, and it was great fun. It ended on a sour note because the actual editor who took over didn't have the nerve to even tell me he had sacked me. I had to go and find out. But then it was COVID time, and lots of people were losing their life, much less their job. So it didn't upset me. It just upset me the way they went about it. That's what upset me, really. But again, as I said, I'm lucky. That closed. I was in the press room at Kempton. John Hunt asked me what happened to the Weekender. I told him. And then I ended up working for ATR. Matthew Taylor said, look, send us a couple of copies. He looked at it. He said, look, I think we can work with it. I'll write a blog for ATR, comes out on a Tuesday, and it's better because now they can actually put the races to what I've written, and you can take my view or form your own view. So it's got more structure, and it looks better now that it's on ATR.
Yeah, and I've read that. It's on the website, and it tells you your opinions on the horses. So that's an extra addition to anybody's form book.
Yeah,
if they
it helps.
If they
It's a help if you want it or not. But you can watch the race and form your opinion that what I wrote was right or what I wrote was rubbish. So you can form your own opinion by watching it yourself.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you are a punter.
Yeah.
And what's your angle? I'm assuming it's paddock watching.
Well, I think as I keep saying, it's the whole thing. I mean, you work at William Hill Radio, you work with some great people. You work with Andrew Mount, who does stats. You work with Andy Holden and Sam Turner that are on time figures. You've got John Babb, you've got Craig Forsyth, you've got Ross Briley. Everyone has a different angle. So you're working with them and you find out what works for them and what works for you. For me, I do the form in the morning. I have I highlight horses that trainers that are in form, trainers that are out of form. I look at the form of each horse and I form an opinion and I highlight them on the page of the paper. And then I go to the paddock and that's the last part of the jigsaw puzzle because the betting's already been formed, as we know, overnight markets or whatever. You look at the paddock and then you can say, right, that favourite, don't like the look of that. I like the second favourite or the third favourite. So you try and use it to your best advantage. And I said, you watch them go down, you have a bet or you have a bet before. But yeah, I have a bet. I like to have a bet now and again, definitely.
So I'm assuming that you avoid an awful lot of losers by waiting until you see them in the paddock.
I wish that was true. This game is all you back more losers than you do. But yeah, you try and be selective. I don't bet in every race. You try and pick out races where you think you've got I would say an edge. For instance, maybe a 2-year-old maiden. Maybe I may have a bet in, or a 3-year-old handicap where I think this horse is definitely better than his handicap mark. I think he's got more progression to go forward than what he's shown. So those sort of things, your 2-year-old, your races this time of the season, or your group races, like Blackbeard last week, I thought was a great bet because he had proven his Group 1 form. He shows very odd things before a race. He'll stamp. I was at the Curragh when he actually went down on all fours and won. But he's that sort of horse. But I thought the way he performs, he's a horse that's got more to offer. And lucky enough, he obliged on Saturday.
Okay, do you use the betting exchanges?
Yeah, I do.
So do you come away from the paddock and go lay, that can't possibly win?
I don't lay a lot of horses. Maybe I should do, but I don't lay a lot of horses. But I do bet them, and friends that I go racing with do have a strong opinion of laying horses than I do. But yeah, if I say I don't like one and they don't like one, they'll lay it themselves. And I will lay a couple of horses, but I wouldn't say that's my angle in. I wouldn't say that's my angle.
Would you say, can you tell by the betting exchanges that there's other people doing what you're doing, and as soon as a horse walks in the paddock and you think, oh, blimey, that looks a bit ropey, there's a big drift?
Yeah.
Or vice versa?
You do see that. You do see that. I think you see that, especially at the smaller meetings, when that liquidity isn't so big. So we all stand there, and there's about 3 or 4 of us who I know are doing the same thing. Look at a horse, we like the horse, it gets relayed back to whoever, and then you will see the price change dramatically if we all see the same thing, or vice versa. The favourite walks in, he looks terrible. You think, right, we're against this. It's relayed back and it drifts. So yeah, you do see a big movement in the market. Bigger meetings, it's a lot harder because obviously you're going to need a lot of money to move in those big race meetings. But again, it can work in your favour because you can get a price on a horse which at a smaller track would have been a lot shorter.
Okay, now people are going to say what a stupid question this is, asking you. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to see a horse, or at least hear somebody like you saying how a horse looks before a punter bets? I mean, how important should it be to a punter?
It depends on the person. As like I said, everyone does things differently. Some people bet through stats. Some people bet through times. Some people bet because they just go through form. Some people like to do the form and then look at the horse, and then because the thing is not look at the horse you fancy, is looking at the rest of the field. How is the rest of the field compared to the horse you fancy? You may fancy your horse, go and see it. It looks terrible, and then something else and the rest of the field look better. So it's not only your horse you're fancying. You're looking at the makeup of the whole field. Is it a strong maiden? Is it a strong novice hurdle? That's what you're doing. You're taking the whole thing into field into view and look at those and analysing all of the runners. Where obviously, if you're at home, you're kind of betting just on the horse you fancy.
Okay, so would say Andrew Mount, you mentioned him earlier, he's put everything's in this horse's favour, and he's convinced you, and you're going to have a bet.
Yeah.
You've looked at it yourself, and then how bad would it have to look in the paddock not to bet it?
Again, it depends. To me, it depends on what it does. Like I said, it might look brilliant in the pre-parade ring, brilliant in the paddock, and then goes like a bat out of hell down to the start. and then you're thinking, ooh, that's blown its chances. So you just want all, like I say, all your ducks in a row. You want everything just to go smoothly. So yeah, I think the whole thing depends on the person, because like I said, there is so many different ways that people approach betting nowadays.